you became an attorney and had your own law practice.
Okay, well, I always wanted to be an attorney for some reason. I think I
Really?
was
Were you,
very
like,
good at
argumentative as a
arguing.
kid?
Exactly. I debated everybody, including
no
my
way.
parents.
Really?
And my father used to always say to me, with all that debating, you better be an attorney. And somehow it stuck with me. And so I took that path. And so when I came out of law school, when I suffered through that pain, I was actually doing very different law. It's a great story.
What did you start with?
So I was doing injury work, like workers' comp, Social Security, disability, and disability retirement for police and correction officers.
Wow.
Yes, very different work.
Very different. Did you have to go in trial or no?
No, I did hearings, like workers' comp hearings, Social Security hearings, that kind of thing. Interesting stuff, you know, for the people who were really hurt. And so we had great victories. But I got a call one day from a very famous real estate agent in our area.
Yeah.
She called and said, listen, I need you to do a closing for me next week. And I said, a closing? What do I need to do? And she said, just go there. You're smart. You'll figure it out. And I was petrified to say no to her because she's a powerful woman. And so I said, okay, I'll figure it out. And I had no idea what I was doing. But I had really great people at the table. And I thought, I like this. I like this. And from that day on, I was doing real estate work.
So did you find that you liked that more, doing
Absolutely.
Like not dealing with the injury people, more of the real estate stuff?
Absolutely. Real estate is one of those areas of law where everyone on the transaction has the same goal, right? The sellers want to sell a house, right. The buyers want to buy a house.
Right.
So it's a matter of finding a way to get there where everybody is happy. Now we know on transactions, everyone's not always happy.
What? What do you mean?
But it's a
what?
I mean, our clients are happy.
They're always happy. They better be happy.
But, you know, coming from injury, somebody is hurt, you know, and they have to give up their career, you know, something they wanted to do in most cases. And because of something unforeseen, now they can no longer do it. So there was kind of a sadness to that on some level.
Yeah.
With real estate, you know, people are excited. They want to buy a house. They're starting a new chapter for whatever reason. And sellers are moving on. They've owned a house for some time and now they're moving to the next chapter. So there's a feeling of excitement in that kind of law. And I just really liked the colleagues I was working with, that client that I had.
Yeah.
And like I said, I had a lot of respect for the broker.
Yeah.
And so I thought, maybe this is something I can do. I did it once. Maybe I can keep going. And from there, I kind of just found my groove.
Did you work under somebody to do real estate, or you just kind of did it on your own?
You know, I really figured it out on my own
on
some level. Not to say that, you know, I knew everything at the time. I did have people I could ask and run things by. But, you know, I am very much a believer in there's always a solution. It's my famous line.
Yes,
you've heard me say
she always says that.
So you get these complicated things that come up on a title search or going on with a home or a buyer who has a certain circumstance that they need to work around. And I just truly believe I can find a solution. It's, you know, I'm not saying I always do, but most of the time I do. You have to be creative. So I like that part of this type of work as well. There is always a way. You just need to get everyone on board with your idea. Show them how it can be done. And, you know, again, I've surrounded myself with really great people. So we do wind up getting it done.
Yes. I'm a testimony to that.
One of the great people.
Thank you. So let me ask you a question. What has been your worst real estate transaction?
Ooh. I would say probably the tough ones are when people are going through a divorce. You know, you are representing both parties, and when you're doing that, you know, you have to be able to speak to both of them about everything, and you make that very clear as an attorney that there is no one-on-one confidentiality if you're going to use the same attorney. But sometimes you find yourself in the middle of the battle. So, you know, as a young attorney starting out, you get caught up in the emotion a little bit, and it takes time to learn that that is not your emotion to carry. Right? You're supposed to just be the advisor.
Right.
It's funny, I've said recently quite a bit that I find sometimes that clients feel as though, you know, when they're anxious about something or when they're upset about something, that maybe the attorney is not as upset, right? And they get a little like, why aren't they as angry as me? Why aren't they as upset as me? But you don't want an attorney who is dealing with the emotion. You want an attorney who's dealing with the law and the facts and finding a way to move forward. So I sometimes say to clients, I hope you don't feel I'm not feeling your frustration. I am feeling it completely, but I'm trying to find a resolution. And if I get stuck in the emotional, I'm not going to be able to find the resolution.
That's very good.
So that's a tough area, you know, the emotional part. Buying a house is tough, right? It's very tedious. There's a lot of emotion. You're not really sure that you're going to get it until you actually walk out with the keys.
Right.
You know, we say to our clients,
until
don't go order furniture.
Right.
Don't make plans yet. Let's see what happens until you get your keys. So, you know, you have to keep yourself at bay too, because sometimes things do frustrate you too when you're representing clients, but you have to be able to separate that. That is a tough job, but if you can find out how to do that, it makes your job a lot easier.
So I find that as a broker, right, because I deal with obviously the same people you do, the same people.
Yeah, a lot more of the emotion.
Right.
You deal
I
with.
definitely deal with more of the emotion and
Yeah.
the like, you know, they'll call the attorney and then they're intimidated a little bit by you because you are an attorney, and they'll call me and they'll be like, you know, I get the like, oh, what do I do? And I'm like, okay, listen, we got this, we're good.
Right.
But I think that's what makes a good team.
Yes.
Like, especially, like, you know, I know you have other realtors that you work with as well, but I find that working with you is cohesive in dealing with our clients because we are empathetic toward the people, but we're both trying to get to the same goal.
Right.
We're trying to get them to the closing. It's not always easy to do. I find that working with you in particular, you know, I mean, there's a few guys. That
Absolutely.
Really, you know, like we have good attorneys we work with. I'm not saying that, but working with you, there's a collaboration that we actually are able to calm the client down.
Yes.
And get them to the next level.
Yeah. And you and I are constantly in touch.
Yeah.
So I find sometimes that I hear some of my colleagues that are realtors say, the attorney never gives me an update or doesn't respond to me, or I'm not sure what's going on, or I'm hearing it through the client. And as we know, things can get mixed up when you're hearing it, you know, through somebody else.
Correct, yep.
So I find it is important, and you know, my two sisters are realtors, so I have a realtor trained mind.
Right.
I find it important to keep the realtor in the loop. And the greatest thing about working with you is, and we just talked about this the other day, is that I add you to emails on occasion. You know, you don't need every single email.
No.
Your you know, inbox would explode, but you have enough of your own emails coming in. But I'll add you to the emails where there's an update or where I know that there might be an issue with the buyer, so that you are on the same page. And the beauty is you never respond. You know it's there, you read it, you got the information, and unless there's something you can add to either correct what I'm saying or update it further, you just keep that information. So it doesn't become a big conversation on this email with a million people on a thread and the client saying, what the heck are they talking about?
Right.
We touch base maybe outside of that, but you're aware. And it is so important. I don't think, you know, a lot of times people understand the value of the realtor through the process. Of course, you're valuable before, right? Before it comes to the attorney's desk. You're certainly valuable during walkthrough and closing and afterwards when things come up. But there is a value in between, and it's just a matter of finding the value in that person. Now, not everyone is like you. You know, so everyone has a different way. You have to find your way to work with each realtor and each attorney, I'm sure. But if you find that, you will, I promise you, have happy clients.
Yeah.
And that is the most important thing. Clients don't want to see their team on different pages where they're hearing different things.
Right, and I find that some attorneys are alarmists.
Yes.
Like when something goes wrong.
Right.
Right? Or they'll go right to the client instead of coming to us.
Right.
Or they'll go, you know, make a problem with the bank or whatever the situation is, right? Because every situation is different. Every transaction is different.
Right.
But I find that when somebody like you, which is what I love about you, is that when you're working and you see there's a problem, you'll come to me and we'll figure it out. We won't even tell the client half the time.
Right.
And we already have the resolution in a day or so. We'll wait a day, see if it'll work out. If
Right.
it doesn't work out by itself, we have to do a couple things, whatever.
Right.
But we won't tell the client to get them more stressed out because they're,
Right.
you know, maybe they're not gonna, oh, does that mean we're not gonna be able to buy, or, you know, something like that.
Right.
Or we're not gonna be able to sell the house.
Right. And then they don't sleep that night.
Right.
Right? And then they're like, please, we need an update. And we know sometimes updates take time.
Right.
And again, it goes back to the emotion, right? We know it's our job. We know it might take a little time. Let's see where we are
Right.
at the point of resolution. Then we can tell the client what occurred and how we resolved it,
Right.
and everything is fine.
Right.
We have an answer. Because when you bring a client into the issue before we even fully understand it or know if there's a response, how could they possibly weigh in besides in a panic? Right? There's nothing for them to do.
No.
Most of the time they don't fully understand, right? They shouldn't. It's not their job. It's why they have us. So why get them so excited when it's a beautiful thing when you can say at a closing table, hey, FYI, this hiccup came along and this is how we resolved it and you're fine. You know, it doesn't take them through the roller coaster of the emotion, which they're already going through.
And I think sometimes they don't realize the value in us doing that. You know
True.
what I mean? They don't, and I'm not saying this to be, I don't know the word, but it's like they don't appreciate that we actually do that extra step because they're just at the closing table, but they don't see we're going stressed out, trying to figure out what's happening. We don't let on to them that we're stressed out. You know, because we do get stressed out doing this job sometimes.
Yeah. And sometimes we do say, oh, is this going to make it? But you don't want to hear your attorney and realtor say, are we going to get to a closing table? You want to be able to deliver the answer. So sometimes we're not going to get to a closing table. Sometimes the issues we can't overcome. But at least when we sit down and explain that to our client, we can explain all the ways we tried. So they can see we put in the effort. And also I think you and I are very similar in the sense that we do that for every client. Whether they're what they call a difficult client, an easy client, a trusting client, a client that knows a lot. We do it for everybody in the background. We're not doing it for the praise. We're really doing it to get to the finish line no matter what. So it's, you know, tunnel vision. We get there. We're going to get there. And we figure out how to do that for sure.
And I totally appreciate you for that because that's a very difficult
Right back at you.
Because, you know, sometimes the paralegals get involved and I love paralegals. I'm not saying anything bad about paralegals. But sometimes when you can't get directly to, like, Erin and I get direct contact with you. Right?
Always.
So, and you know, it might be a day that you might not respond to something because we're all busy, right? But I mean, we always have that communication, which is the most important thing.
Yep.
So now getting on to what's happening like in the world a little bit. We have some things that are changing in New York State.
Yes.
And one of them happens to be the property condition disclosure statement.
Right.
So you and I have discussed this before, and I just want you to explain a little bit of what that is and what the changes could be and what the issues could be to make it more difficult.
Currently, the way the law is right now on February 27th is a seller, when selling a property, has an option to either complete a questionnaire about a property and provide that to the buyer, or to give the buyer a $500 credit at closing. They do not complete the questionnaire and they make no statements about the property. And that $500 protects the seller in the sense that the buyer can never sue the seller for not disclosing something. The buyer does their own inspections and that's what they rely on. The law is going to change and we are not, as sellers, going to have that option of the $500. We are going to have to fill out the questionnaire. And as you can imagine in our industry, we're all talking about it, right? Realtors, attorneys, title company, we're all discussing this and how it's going to play out. And, you know, no one can predict how it's actually going to play out and whether it's going to be a permanent change. But I know myself, I'm getting together with a group of attorneys on Thursday night to talk about it. And I've had other invitations to do that as well with different colleagues because we're all trying to see. But in my understanding, you know, the original question for me is, who's advising these sellers, right? Here's sellers, here's a questionnaire to fill out. Who are they talking that through, right? Because they're going to be nervous about answering any questions, of course. Are they going to come to me? Because I'm not going to advise on a house I have not seen. I don't know the history.
I'm definitely not going to do that.
The realtor's not going to advise. Again, it's not your home. You didn't live there. You can't answer, and you don't want to tell people how to answer something. Especially, you know, it's going to say a legal document, so you're going to say, this is a lawyer's kind of thing. So there's a little bit of, you know, gray area there. But it's very interesting to be aware of the fact that the way the proposed law reads is that the seller needs to complete this on their own. Okay, so this is an honor system, you know. Those questions have to be answered truthfully based on your actual knowledge. That's it, actual knowledge. So if you are aware, then you answer and explain. And, you know, I think if anyone tries to skirt that on some level, there's going to be some repercussions there, and maybe there should be. You know, maybe there should be. If you're going to mislead or not represent correctly, maybe you should be called to task on that. Certainly, the way the law is going to be written, it does strongly advise buyers to still have home inspections. You know, I think that was a question I heard early on too. What about home inspectors? Right. Are they going to be needed anymore now that we're getting all the information from the seller? Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. You do your own due diligence. You listen to your realtors. You let them, you know, guide you in that, what inspections you should do. Maybe you should do a further one. You need to protect yourself, not just rely on somebody that you don't know, right? To be honest, because you really don't have any idea. But I think sellers got a little nervous about, how would I know if there was ever this in the house? Or, I don't know, I guess that could have been a leak, but I don't. Well, that's the point. You don't know. We're not asking you to be roofers, you know, we're not asking you to be septic companies. We're just asking you to simply answer questions that you do know. And I would say us, I mean New York State. But, you know, the initial reaction, I think, at least for me, I can only speak for myself, was a little bit of panic. Right?
There was like there might be more lawsuits, right? That's going to open a huge door of other problems for us. And then it's going to take longer to get all the documentation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So there was nerve. And I know myself and my own experience, I'm sure you had this too. I think we've talked about it before, because what haven't we talked about in our business? But we had a lot of rain.
Oh, yeah.
This year, right? Over the last 6 months or so. And, you know, people who closed prior to that suffered some flooding in their homes. I know I had a few clients of mine call, and they were up in arms and furious with the home inspector and the seller, and they must have known, you know, and that is a gut reaction. What the heck, you know, how did I not know this house is going to flood? Shouldn't my inspector have seen this? Well, we've laughed about this before. An inspection is a screenshot in time, right? You can't predict future. You certainly can't predict climate. You know, I mean, who the heck would think that Florida would be getting snow? You know, it just wasn't in our mindset, but that's the reality now. So homes that may have had experiences 3 years ago, things are different today. You know, it is important to still do those things so you're aware of the problems they can see. And I don't even know where I was going with that. I went off on a bit of a tangent. I think it was the inspectors. Just to say that, you know, it's good to protect yourself, but not everything is predictable. You know, I've done a bunch of first-time buyer seminars, and I've said to buyers at the time, listen, it's not the seller's job to give you your dream house. It is the seller's job to give you what was their dream house, and you now make it yours. So I think that falls under that same umbrella. You know, you're not going to know every little thing, and the property disclosure questionnaire is not going to give you all of the answers. You still may have issues that the seller was not aware of. People live, how many clients have you seen? People live in their house 40 years. They had no idea there was radon. They had no idea the septic tank was cracked. They had and honestly had no idea, no knowledge of it. So I think that, you know, the initial reaction was, oh God, it's going to be a panic. But I think if everyone kind of puts their common sense hat on, takes a deep breath, relies on the experts, the home inspectors, hopefully the sellers are honest, I think it's going to lead to getting a better picture of what you're buying, knowing what you're investing in. And it's important to note that New York is the only state that has this. Every other state, they do provide the answers. New York has that option for the $500. So that's my long take.
So I definitely want to know what the other attorneys say to you at this meeting.
Well, I know.
I really am, because everybody has different perspectives.
Absolutely.
On it, right? Because you have some attorneys that are like, no, we don't need any more lawsuits, right? So this is going to be a really bad problem.
Yeah.
And you have other people that are like, this is great, because then they have to say what they know on the house. And then you have owners that, like you said, have lived in a house for 40 years. You can't see behind a wall.
Exactly.
So you don't know if there was like a leak in the roof over there and behind the wall, and now there's like damage to the electrical or whatever. You know what I mean? Like things that could happen. So it's a fine line. I mean, I understand that other states do this, but I guess because it's so new to us, and listen, a lot of people like to sue.
I was just going to say, we're a very litigious state.
Yes.
We're a very litigious
state. We really
are
here.
Yes.
And so that's where I get a little apprehensive about taking on this new aspect of the law, right? Because like you said, I'm not going to be responsible for this law, and you're not going to take on that responsibility either. It's now the homeowner. Now the homeowner has to understand that they have that onus to tell the truth.
Be honest. I was just going to say, yeah, there is no more skirting. I mean, we saw it with municipal reports, right?
Oh, yeah.
In the old days, you could get away with a lot of stuff, and now over the last, 5-7 years, we've seen, listen, there's no skirting around the permit. There's no skirting around getting the certificate of compliance. You got to do it. This is another one of those, right? There's no more hiding things.
Right.
You know, don't put a fresh coat of paint on the bleach stain and think that we're not going to find it.
Or the
You're
mold.
going to have to answer.
There's mold over there.
Mold. And that's one of the areas of property disclosure, the questionnaire that will be released under the new law is more detailed when it comes to lead and mold and asbestos. You know, so if you have the knowledge, report it. You're not going to be alone. A lot of houses have some mold issues. We have companies out there, experts, again, that can fix those things
But
for a
let me
buyer.
ask you a question. So, in your opinion, do you think that they're going to make it where the seller will be responsible? If they tell them, look, I know that there's a problem here with mold, will they, like, I mean, I guess, is it more wiggle room or more bargaining chips for the buyers to say, look, there is mold here, I want you to remediate that, because then that's going to be cost on the buyer? Or do you think there's going to be something where we're going to be able to put in writing somewhere? It's got to be in writing, right? Just to say that the house is being sold in this condition, and this is what I know about it.
Yeah. I think we're going to probably see the property disclosure questionnaires attached to the contract so that there's no deniability, right, of what you knew or didn't know. And I think that protects everybody on the transaction. It's an interesting point. I think basically the way the law is, it's mere disclosure. There's no weighing in on who has to do what.
Right.
So I think there's still a lot of flexibility for the brokers to negotiate those items.
Right.
You know, it's certainly not going to be a sit around and wait for the inspector to find it and hope they don't, right? If you're aware as a seller, you're going to have to be honest about it.
Right.
But don't let things go in the house. If you know about mold, that's a big deal.
Yes.
It's a lot less costly to do it when you first find out than to wait 10 years when you sell.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so I don't really see it affecting the negotiation process, except that there's not going to be the hiding behind anything. It's going to be out in the open. You
No
know
hiding, people, no hiding.
We'll find you.
Well, Erin, this was a great conversation we're having today.
Episode 1.
Episode 1. We'll do this again. If you like this, like and comment.
Please.
Like and follow. And we'll definitely do this again. But thank you, Erin Coxen, Coxen Law in Mahopac, New York. And again, this is Michele Marina with Atlantica East Properties Associates. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening. Hit a few bumps.
Keep looking at me.
Are you still keeping that in the video?
No. This will be in our bloopers. This is our first take. Take 2. No, take